Greetings, dear chess fans and experts. This is FIDE Master Max Omariev with you, and today we'll start looking at the World Blitz Chess Championship 2022, in which Magnus Carlsen and all the strongest grandmasters of the world fought for the last title in 2022. But the title is one of the most important, the title of World Champion. And already in the first round, Magnus surprised everyone. The day before, the world champion was probably celebrating his victory in the World Rapid Chess Championship pretty hard. That's why he was late for the round the next day. There were some respectable people from Kazakhstan who wanted to make the inaugural move on his board, but they had to do it on the FIDE's board because Magnus was sleeping in his room. Even his father couldn't wake him up. No one could. Vladislav Kovalov had to start the clock, and when Magnus had less than 40 seconds left on it, everyone thought that he simply gave up on the game. But no, there he is, and he's running fast. He's rushing to the board. You can tell by his clothes that he put on whatever was lying on the floor next to the bed, because the dress code was to play in shirts and blazers. Plus, Magnus has a lot of sponsors, but he didn't care about that. He had to get to the board as fast as possible. So he starts the game with 30 seconds on the clock. Let me remind you that the time control is 3 minutes plus a 2-second time increment per move. It's this time increment that leaves the chance of success for the champion. Well, let's get to the game. This is the French defense, exchange variation, a strange choice from Vladislav, and you can see that he takes a long time to think from the very first moves. You may think that he decided to equalize the time, such a gentlemanly act, but it looks ambiguous. Either he thinks over the moves, or he really wants to compensate for Magnus's delay, but he thinks long and hard from the first ones. Well, here you can make the c5 move, capture space, but he hesitates. There are simple moves, knight c3, a bunch of development moves, and that's basic theory. It's pretty strange why it takes him so long to think. Magnus is already set up for a quick game and gets bored because Vladislav just doesn't make a move. I think it would be more impressive if he equalized his time with his opponent's time on the first move. But if you don't want to do that, then play fast from the beginning. So I'm not sure that this is a so-called gesture of goodwill. It's probably just thinking. Knight c3, castling. He's already spent a minute. Move it to c5, man, come on. Grab the space. You should give Magnus some trouble because the French defense exchange variation isn't considered very dangerous. Well, it could work for Blitz, of course, but he still thinks about every move, and heavily. Write your opinion in the comments, guys. Do you think he wants to equalize the time, or did he just tense up thinking how to escalate the situation for his opponent who's in time trouble? But his thinking is, of course, and we'll say it again, fantastically long. I don't know how to explain it. It looks like he really thinks hard. Maybe he wanted it to be sort of unofficial, you know, like some people do charity work and tell everybody about it and the others do it in secret. Perhaps that's what he wanted to do. Well, okay, cd, rook e8, bishop e2, knight d7, and castling. So he wins a pawn temporarily, but Magnus plays a6 competently to prevent bishop g5. And now the d5 pawn is just a matter of time. Black will take it. Magnus wants to play knight b6, knight d5. Question: what has white achieved? Vlad could try knight b2 to attack the bishop, but no, he doesn't even try to do that. Rook e1, knight b6. The pawn is under attack and there's nothing to protect it with. On queen b3 we can capture, and after bishop h2 the queen drops off, so this move doesn't protect the pawn. Vladislav plays knight e5, hoping for some active play, but they're almost equal in time. Vlad has just 30 seconds more on his clock. Knight takes d5, Magnus takes the pawn. He has a better position simply due to the fact that white has an isolated d4 pawn. Black has a better structure and excellent support square for the d5 knight. No problems at all. But Vladislav still thinks the same way. That's it, man, enough, the time's equal, you can play with your real strength, with real speed. Well, as we can see, he still thinks, plays bishop f3, c6. Well, now that he has practically less time than Magnus, he gradually begins to speed up, although I wouldn't say that. He's already behind in time. Queen b3, pressing on the d5 square, but it's well protected. The c6 pawn protects it. Magnus wonders what to do. Now the first moment where the world champion stops to think, he wants to play to win, of course. A draw does not suit him. He plays queen b6, offers to exchange the queens, soberly estimates that in the endgame he'll have a better position. Knight d5. He can capture the d5 pawn, bishop d5, cd, queen d5, but there are some problems as well. So queen takes b6 is played by Vladislav Kovalev. AB, the queens are exchanged, he ruined the structure. But black has two bishops. Black's position is slightly better, because bishops are stronger after all. Bishop d2, an adequate development move. f6, Magnus drives away this active knight. It was the only active piece and now it's gone. He has to retreat. Knight d3, rook takes e1. He captures that with bishop to keep the e2 pawn. And Magnus thinks about how to swing the position in his favor. So far he attacks the d4 pawn. Bishop c3, protected. Bishop c5, attacking the knight. Knight e1, he retreats, activates the king. Pawn to a3, so a2 doesn't hang. b5 wants to undermine. Rook c1 and rook c4 with the idea of b4. The rook breaks the pin. b4, he exchanges his doubled pawn. Now c3 hangs, he needs to do something. The bishops are exchanged, d4 and b2 are weak, but he protects them with the rook. g5, f3, h5. Magnus advances. The king moves to f2, h4 fixes the king side. And there's a problem with the moves. He can't move the knight because the pawn will drop off. The same with the rook. He can only use his king or move the pawn to g3. Well, he can move the pawn to h3, so the h2 pawn becomes a weakness, but the h3 pawn may also be weak, so Magnus exchanges. In king e6, he still activates the king. Knight g2, king d6. The knight moves to e3, attacking the d5 pawn. Bishop e6. So what do we do next? Magnus wants to move his king to the b3 square by such winding paths. King e2, the king goes to help the pawns, but so far as to move back and forth because the knight hangs there, the f3 and g3 pawns. One more repetition, and rook a4, Magnus comes in from the side, wants to penetrate from below. King f2, bishop d7. The bishop moves to I don't know where. g4, he can play bishop b5, but what's next? Rook a1, the world champion invades. Rook d1, rook a2, attacks the pawn, shakes the defense, attacking from all sides, and b5. Wants to push the pawn as far as possible. He can move it to b4, so it's closer to the pawn's promotion square. King moves to d3, black can give check, move their bishop to b5. Come on, Magnus, you have enough time. Bishop b5 check. White king goes to c2, protecting the pawn. Now the rook is freed from guarding it. Bishop c4, he wants to move it to b3. King to b1, the rook returns to the base. King c2. Magnus can play rook h8 to come from the other side, but he attacks the knight so far. And Vlad misplays! Knight c4 is a bad move. He should have played knight f5 check. He misplayed and now Magnus Carlsen has two passed pawns. Well, they're not passed yet, but they will be soon. The d5 and f3 pawns are weak. That's it! The defense is falling apart. Vladislav got into Magnus's trap. King d5, rook b4. He attacks the rook so far. The rook moves to a4 and rook f4. The d4 pawn hangs. The pawn endgame is lost, so white has to play rook a6. The king moves forward. The position is absolutely lost. Rook d6 check. King e5, protecting f6. Magnus wants to have two connected pawns. Rook g4, rook b3. Check, and now the pawns will move forward. Nothing will stop them. f5, b4. The rook is behind the opponent's pawn, and Vladislav gives up, because black's pawns are much closer and there are more of them. That's the kind of victory from the world champion. Even with 30 seconds, he is unstoppable against the opponent's 3 minutes. But the question remains, did Vladislav intentionally spend his time as a gentleman, or did the opponent's superiority put so much pressure on him that he hesitated from the very first moves? Write your opinion in the comments, and Magnus went to change to go into the second round and show a real masterclass. And I thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give this video a like and don't forget to hit the bell button as well to make sure you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Also, check out our Telegram channel where we post only the latest news in the world of chess. Keep playing and studying chess, and I'll see you in the next video.